Okay, well, we're at 11:15, so I'll get started here. Welcome to our Integrated Pest Management Academic Seminar Series, which is designed to increase awareness of new research and techniques that advance IPM and its adoption in all types of pest management settings. These seminars are once a month during the academic year. And you can find the upcoming seminars as well as our other events like our What's Bugging You First Friday series on our website, which I'll link to in the chat in a minute. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce Ivan Grijalva, Assistant Professor of Precision Agriculture in the Department of Entomology at Louisiana State University. He earned his Ph.D. in entomology from Kansas State University with a focus on precision pest management and digital agriculture. His research interests include machine learning, GIS, and remote sensing, with a particular emphasis on applying machine learning models for detecting insects, weeds, and diseases for use in digital agriculture tools and robotics that enhance precision pest management. His work using machine learning to automate object detection has contributed significantly to the advancement of automation across many different disciplines. So thank you, Yvonne, and yeah, take it away.
All right. So everyone can hear me, right? And see me. Okay, great.
Yep.
So nice to meet you with everyone. Thank you, Brian, for the invitation, and Dr. Calixto also for the invitation. My name is Ivan, and today I'm happy to present this research topic that potentially is a very hot topic in research, that is about using machine learning vision for insect monitoring and site-specific management. A little bit of the presentation, we will have an outline that will talk about my background expertise. I know that you will be interested in some of the data that I did during my master's degree at Purdue about the use of neonicotinoids, and also how I shifted my research to use more technology for pest management in terms of using machine learning models for insect detection, how machine learning models can help us automate tasks when we do field sampling, also how this technology can be useful in decision support tools for farmers, for stakeholders, or for researchers. Also, I will talk about some of the projects that I'm leading now with my graduate students related with some of the issues that we face here in Louisiana, and also how machine learning and automation can help dealing those issues. I want to give you a little bit about of my background that already Brian mentioned it. I'm from Ecuador. I did my undergrad in a university that is called Zamorano, that is located in Honduras. It's very related to agricultural production. Then I joined with Corteva as a co-op in 2016. Then I decided I need to increase my knowledge and being competitive. And I decided to apply for a master's degree at Purdue University. During my master's degree, I was working with neonicotinoids and also how we can use sampling methods to improve management decisions in watermelon production and corn production. Then when I finished my master's degree at Purdue, I moved to Kansas State. And during my PhD, I realized that I need to learn more about using remote sensing, GIS, or technology so we can improve our sampling in the field and also provide tools to farmers and stakeholders to be able to manage crops more efficiently. And after I finished my postdoc at Kansas State and I graduated from my PhD, I applied for a new position at the LSU about a precision agriculture position. And I've been in this position now for 10 months. A little bit of the background or the expertise that I did during my master's degree, and I think that is very interested for Cornell related with the neonicotinoids. I work in a system during my master's degree that tried to understand how we can produce watermelon using two management methods. The conventional method that is typically a farmer plant watermelon production, and they spray in a weekly basis for a particular pest that is the striped cucumber beetle. And usually Indiana farmers, they don't like to do pest discounting. They don't follow those protocols because pyrethroid applications are really cheap, easy to do, and it's not a very big spend for the farmer. Also, this experiment we want to simulate in a corn landscape that is very typical in all the Midwestern states. So we plant a patch of watermelon inside of a landscape of corn with seeds that were treated with neonicotinoids. As a conventional management practice, the second treatment was more towards integrated pest management. When we go to the field and we start sampling the fields, and when we reach a threshold of this striped cucumber beetle, we sprayed an insecticide application and was surrounded by corn without neonicotinoids seed treatment. This experiment was replicated across all the state of Indiana in different research stations to see how is the variability there. And we conducted visually counts of this striped cucumber beetle that is the major pest in watermelon production. Some of the highlights of the results, because I don't want to get pretty deep to it, but you can check the publications that are available. Something interesting about this is that most of the fields in watermelon production didn't reach the economic threshold of this pest. So the farmers are just going to their fields just because they want to spray, and it's not necessary. Something interesting to observe here in this graph in the IPM is that just one field reached the economic threshold and was spraying based on discounting. So out of 10 fields, just one field of watermelon reached the pest threshold and was sprayed, meaning that the farmers during all these years, they just go there and spray insecticides without having the knowledge about the economic threshold levels. Additionally, something interesting that we find that we didn't find any significant differences between seed treatments with neonicotinoids versus seeds without the neonicotinoids in the corn production. And other highlight about the project was that we observed more yield production in the watermelon fields compared with the conventional method. After that, I finished my master degree, and then I realized, okay, I need to learn all these cool things that were happening at that time. That was machine learning. I was very interested about using drone to scout, using drone robotic vehicles, and then I found this opportunity at Kansas State. I finished my master degree, and I decided to go to Kansas State in a NSF project funded about using robotics for pest discounting. So I was working during my PhD in a system, specifically sorghum. Sorghum is a very major crop in Kansas, also in Texas, also in Oklahoma, that is attacked by this tiny aphid. This tiny aphid, when it reaches economic threshold of 50, a farmer decides to make an insecticide application. The tricky about this thing is that the farmer needs to go to the field, start sampling these leaves, because these sorghum aphid lives beneath the leaves, and you need to visually observe them. And they are very tiny, they reproduce very fast, and also they have different stages. So in one leaf, you can see different life stages of this aphid, and it's very tricky when you want to evaluate them because they reproduce really fast. You need some expertise to be able to identify them between other aphid species that attack sorghum. Also, it's very time-consuming counting aphids. So I was thinking, okay, so how we can target or how we can address those issues with automation. So at that point, I was very interested in machine learning. And machine learning is a technique that you can use to automate your activities. You can apply for image analysis, you can apply it in video analysis, you can create a large language model to be able to identify insects. So during my PhD, I was trying to address this big issue. I know that maybe you don't want to answer this question, but when you go to the field and sample for sorghum aphids, you see that there is a lot of aphids, and this is a real image that you can observe in the field. So usually the farmer start counting them. So I don't know how many they are, right? They can be thousands, and counting all that live takes a lot of time. Some of the big challenges that I mentioned before is that these aphids reproduce very fast. It's a very time-consuming activity. However, the farmers still go to the field and they start counting these tiny aphids to make a management decision. So I was thinking how we can apply machine learning to automate these activities. So during my PhD, I created an app that you can take an image with your phone, take the leaf, upload it to the web application that I built, and then apply machine learning, that is a model that is behind the scenes of the application. You upload the image to the system, and the image can tell you how many aphids you have in the leaf. Also, it can tell you if you need to spray an insecticide application. So the farmer, instead of going to the field, count all these aphids, you just take an image with your phone, upload to the web application, and the web application will tell you how many aphids you have. Also, it will tell you the different life stages, for example, how many nymphs you have, and also how many alates you have. After finishing my, after doing this detection app, also the model that I built when I was doing my PhD was also focused to have a ground robotic vehicle that can go through sorghum lines, detect these aphids, and spray. Because we want to see how this type of ground robotic vehicles can scout fields. So we built in collaboration with another team in engineering this ground robotic vehicle that used the model that I developed for my PhD to be able to detect and count these aphids. As you can see in the video, you can see a real-time detection. In your right part of your screen, you will see a ground robotic vehicle. You have in the right line, some sorghum plants that they don't have any aphid infestations. And in the left, you see some sorghum plants that they have some aphid infestations. So the robot will detect those aphid infestations and it will spray an insecticide. So you can see how it's moving the robot right now. And then it detects the aphids, make an insecticide application, stop, and then you have another plant that has some aphids, detect them, and make an insecticide application. So currently, right now, the ground robotic vehicle is under filling a patent to see if we can continue to develop the robot so it can be used for crop scouting and also for management decisions. When I finished my PhD, I decided that I need to continue learning these skills about using automation, machine learning, and how we can increase automation in sampling. Besides all my work experience working in different agricultural systems, as I explained it before, we know that traditional insect monitoring has been practiced for a long time, and we continue relied on visual observations and sampling devices for management decisions. Traditional insect monitoring has been practiced for a long time, and we continue use very, very different equipment, like for example, sample devices that are very, very heavy to carry, and we extract samples. In the entomology work or in the IPM, we use a lot of our visual observations to count insects and also to identify them. Additionally, we use a lot of traps mechanisms, right? We put the sticky traps to attract an insect, and then we count them, and then we make a management decision. And also we use a lot of sweep nets in soybean production, for example, to count insects. We know that this activity is very time consuming. Also, it can be influenced by weather. When it's very hot summers or any bad weather, we are not able to go to the field and sample the field, so it's pretty limited. Also, when we collect some insect samples, when we are doing scouting, identification also can be a problem because you can have so many species that you don't know what they are, so the management decision becomes pretty difficult to do. Additionally, for example, in Louisiana, we have a lot of problems of invasive species. that come to the state, and it's very difficult to have a prompt response of a management decision when we don't know what species it is. So in generally, counting in the entomology is very traditional. We use a lot of visual observations. Additionally, besides in the entomology that we use a lot of another visual observations, we use visual observations in other sampling activities that are related to other fields, right? For example, Brian was talking to me that he researching with management, right? So visual observations not only are applied to identification of weeds, it's applied to identifications of diseases, it's applied to identify or detect insects, and also to examine plant traits. All of these activities are very traditionally, it requires a lot of training, expertise, and not very time consuming. However, with the current technology that we have right now, we can integrate sensors to our research programs to be able to detect things that our visual observations cannot observe and can be more efficient. So we can integrate remote sensing. We can use two approaches in remote sensing to be able to automate these activities. One of the approaches of remote sensing is proximal sensing, that is using sensors that are close range to collect data. It can be your mobile device, it can be a camera system, it can be plant spectrometers to detect insect damage. Also, we can think about using remote sensing for distant data collection. It can include drones, robotics, and also satellite platforms to be able to detect different things. The most important about this thing is that remote sensing can help us to detect stressors, be very preventive, and also it can improve the monitoring of large areas. Additionally to this, in the context of monitoring, machine learning can be applicable to automate those activities. So everyone is hearing about machine learning, how it can help our activities, but I want to introduce you what is really machine learning. Machine learning in practice is just describing your data that you collect to a computer so the computer can understand the features that you want to do. So for example, if you collect an image of an insect, right? And you want to know what type of insect it is, the species level, you just need to collect the data and then train an algorithm in the computer so you can ask the computer to identify for you. So behind the scenes of machine learning, there is a lot of coding programming that you need to build to be able to perform that task. And usually it's based on the training data that you provide to a model. When you do that and apply machine learning to the context of monitoring, you can create different activities that as human we perform in our daily activities or in our research. For example, you can create models that are able to detect important pests. You can create models that can not only detect, you can create models that can classify weeds, create models that can segment the specific things in your field. And the most important thing is that when you create this type of detection models, you are also able to count them, which is something that in the entomology or in the weed area we use a lot. So counting can be automated. So why is machine learning important in the agricultural context? So I want you to imagine that you have a soybean plant. So this is a soybean plant that one day was infested by a steam bug that is commonly the major pest in soybean. So you created a machine learning model that is able to detect these little insects, right? Then you can start thinking about how we can map this steam bug in this plant. With your phone, you can create a GPS coordinate of the plant that was infested, and with the use of the machine learning model, can be able to detect this steam bug. And then you can create a map of the locations of your field. Where is this steam bug? This model can not only be deployable into your phone, It can be deployable to drone technology. It can be deployable to a ground robotic vehicle that help us scouting. And with that area, you can start creating maps that will help you not only to treat the areas where is the infestation, but also you don't need to treat all the areas where the infestation is not present. At least in the insects dynamics, some of the insect pests are not uniform. They are very clustered in some patches, at least for sorghum aphids, they are very clustered. So you can start thinking about creating prescription maps where you just need to treat specific areas in the field instead of doing a whole field application, which will reduce a lot of the cost. Also, it will become more sustainable. Additionally, the models can be deployable into how I call them decision support tools, which I believe farmers and stakeholders need at the moment. How we can create an app that can create a management decision for the farmer, and can this be more automated? Usually to create this type of technology, you need a lot of data. That is the main thing. It's not necessary learn all the coding behind, because you have tools right now that you can learn coding very fast. But the main thing is asking the right research question, and also what type of data you need to collect. So for example, you can use camera sensors, you can use drone technology. With the current drone technology that we have right now, you're able to detect pretty small insects at the moment. So the goal is to collect imagery, primary imagery. It could be in RGB, red, green, and blue formats. Then you apply different image analysis techniques and machine learning models that are open source to create different tasks that you want to address. It could be a classification task, it could be an object detection class or a segmentation, or it can be an identification tool. Some of the examples that I want to show you now is that we can detect different life stages of different insects. For example, you can detect nymphs of sorghum aphids compared with the allids forms. Additionally, you can start thinking about monitoring beneficial insects. For example, bumblebees. I'm involved in a project that we are trying to monitor bumblebees with the use of drone technology. And also all these type of technology I being applied these 2 months into my research program at LSU in different systems. For example, in the next couple of slides, I want to show you how this technology can be applied to detect these scale that attack Rosa cane. Rosa cane is a very important plant species here in Louisiana that protects from storms, and also it protects a lot of the oil infrastructure here in the state. So these little tiny scale damage Rosa cane. So most of the researchers here, they start counting these little tiny insects, which is very time consuming. So there is a room to automate these things. Also, the technology can be deployable to insect detection, disease detection, or it can be applied to weed detection. In the next couple of slides, I want to show you some of the data that I've been working on with my graduate students. Most of the results are leading by my students, so I want to say thanks to them because they are leading the projects. So the first project that I'm involved is with my student Joshua. He's my master's student. He's working in this system that is Rosa cane. So as I mentioned to you, Rosa cane is a plant species that is very abundant in the Mississippi River Delta. This plant has a very extensive root system, anchor sediments, and defend from coastal erosion. Also, it protects a lot of oil infrastructure here in the state. Additionally, it has a lot of ground biomass that protects, as I mentioned, coastal infrastructure against the storms during hurricane season. The bad thing about this that since 2016, there were reports about this Rosa cane start dying, specifically in this zone in the Mississippi River Delta. So since 2016, there is a lot of research going in the state about how to understand why this Rosa cane is dying. So they found that it's infested by this little scale. It's an invasive species here in Louisiana that is native to China and Japan. Usually the scales literally kill the plant because they reproduce pretty fast. Also, as you can see, they are very tiny. In the picture, you will see a magnification. They are not so big. They are less than 5 millimeters, but they are very tiny. And most of the researchers go to the field and they start counting them to understand how many they are, to understand the population dynamics of the scales. Most of the challenges that you have to monitor Rosa cane scale is that the sampling methods are very labor intensive. Most of the researchers go to the Mississippi River Delta, they bring all the cane to the lab and they start counting them, which is very time consuming. Not only is time consuming the counting, but they also need to take out the leaf sheet because the Rosa cane scale infests inside these stems. Additionally, Rosa cane scale is very small, it's less than 5 millimeters. And also they like to overlap in areas of high infestation. So it's very tricky to count them and you can have a lot of error-prone mistakes. Additionally, besides that, you have other type of things. Not only you can have different type of scales, you will find scales that are healthy, you will find scales that are parasiticide, and also you will find scales that can be moldy. So to address those issues, I'm working with my graduate student to see how machine learning can automate this process of counting using imagery. So we built a pipeline to first create a data set that we can train a model. So our first step is being collecting Rosa cane with infested with scales. We are trying different image systems. Right now, we are also trying to build our image system so it can take the images of the whole cane. But we start simple. We start using a camera to see if we can train a model, to see if we can able to count them. Then we do some pre-processing. We augmented the data, and we currently have a model that has decent performance to detect this scale. And then goal is to have a tool or a mechanism so the researchers can bring the cane to the lab, take an image, and the system will tell you how many scales they are. These are some of the results that we have. Is based on the taste data. So the taste data was divided, it's around 120 images. In the screen, you will see a confusion metrics that help you to understand what the model is detecting. You have in the x-axis the prediction about the counts of the model and the ground truth in your y-axis. So for example, from 120 images and around 800 or 800 something object detections of the scales, the model is able to detect 468 scales. It's super able to be able to detect them. But also the model is not perfect. It misses some scales around 239, these little dots in red if you can see the screen. But also something that we find interesting was that the model is able to detect the scale without telling us to detect them. So for example, if we didn't see an scale when we were starting to labeling all the data, the model is able to predict that that is the scale. So we went back to the data and we saw that, yeah, a human also missed to count that scale. So the model is doing a better job compared to a human visually observe it. So you can see the beauty about this technology. These are some of the results. Usually when you train a machine learning model, you start using this metrical performance that tells you, oh, this model is good or this model is bad, how you can improve and give you a lot of sense, how is the next step to move forward. The model currently has a precision of 77, a recall of 69, and a mean average precision of 76. Still is underdeveloped, but the main goal was to test, okay, we can detect this scale, so what is the next step to move forward? This is just an example. I know that potentially you will not tell me how many scales they are in this image, but the model predicted 43 scales and in an actual count of 57. So when we submit this image to our model, the computer can tell us in milliseconds that there are 43 scales, right? So if I give this image to a researcher here at LSU, it takes at least 2 to 3 minutes to determine how many scales they are. So you can see how fast the computer can analyze the data and tell you a decision pretty fast. So the next step for us is to continue collecting more data so we can improve the accuracy of the model. And also we are looking forward to build our image system because we find that these scales needs a specific image system to be built from scratch to be able to detect these tiny insects. In the next couple of slides, I will talk about the second project that my other master's student is involved and is more towards soybean production. I don't know a lot of but I think that New York has soybean production. So here in Louisiana, I was very impressed that in Louisiana is ranked the 9 or 10 state of soybean production, which was very impressive for me to know. So soybean production is a major crop in the US. So it counts for 21% of the state total value production here in the state of Louisiana. However, there is a lot of stink bug species here in Louisiana that damage yields and also damage the seeds. One of these ones is the red-banded stink bug that you can see it in there. So usually when you go to do sampling and make a management decision, a farmer take a sweep net and they start sampling. And then after that, this activity can be weather restricted. And here in Louisiana, the summers are very hot, so some farmers don't spend a lot of time in sampling their fields, so they can miss some populations. Also because we have a complex of stink bug species here, so we have around 6 different stink bug species that some of them look similar. At least the green stink bug with the red banded, they look kind of similar if you don't see the red band in the torso of the insect. So ID and counting is a very challenge for a farmer when he is out on the field. Also, to make a management decision is very tricky when you don't know which is the specific species. So we started as simple. We built a preliminary system to be able, we can detect these stink bugs, and we starting gathering information of the stink bugs. The goal of this project is to be able to have a decision support tool for farmers. So currently we build a model that is very accurate because everything right now is controlled under laboratory conditions. We can control the lighting, we can control the camera, so it's very perfect. That is why you can see these results very near to perfection. That is because we have everything controlled. We can control the light temperatures, I can control the camera. So the next level of the project is to try to gather information from the field. But you can see we have a very good metrics of performance of this model, trying to detect those insects. In the last couple of slides, this is a confusion metrics, the same setup of the next project, where you can see how many objects the model is able to see. In the x-axis, you will see the actual count or the actual object detected, and the y-axis, the predicted count of the insect. So we use 151 images to create this confusion metrics from the test dataset. So from a total of 1,579 objects detected, the model is able to detect 1,550 correct detected. It can miss some stink bugs, and also it recognizes a better stink bugs compared with our labeler that help us build the data set. This is an example of the data. So we collected the data also to simulate the background of a SwiftNet. That is why you are seeing the screen white background. So you have here 13 steam bugs that are the ground truth, and the model is able to detect 14 steam bugs. Okay, so as you can see, I don't know if you are able to see in the top of the screen near to the word Steambox 14, you can see that the model is detecting 2 Steambox there. So we are trying to understand why the model is detecting 2 Steambox because there is just only one. So we are trying to see what other type of parameters we can fine tune in the model so it's able to detect and be pretty accurate. But you can see this is very, very unique how computer vision can help you to make counting more efficiently. The next level of the next future of the project is to detect the same process, create the model, so the model can be deployable into a ground robotic vehicle, so the model can detect steam box population in soybeans, also make a management decision based on the sprays, so that is the future of the project. The goal to this is to create something that I call precision pest management. Maybe it's a very new term for you, but I want to tell you what that means. So precision pest management is a term that I came with because it exemplifies how precision ag can be applied to pest management. So I want you to imagine that you have a soybean field, okay? One day, this soybean field is attacked by red-banded steam bugs, right? You have a lot of populations, you go to the field, you start sampling and do a lot of things. Right, so when an economic threshold level is reached, right, farmers decide to make an insecticide application, and they usually spray all the field, right? They are not spraying small patches to just prevent the reproduction of these insects. So if they spray the whole field, which is not necessary, also it can create resistance to the populations and it's not sustainable. However, when you start thinking about that insects or don't have a uniform spatial distribution and they are more clustered, you can create AI models or machine learning models to locate where are the insects in the field, right? So you can create mechanisms, so you can start creating, as I mentioned before, these prescription maps to be able to detect those areas, right? So instead of you going and spraying all the whole field, you can start spraying just the patches where are located the insects, right? So then you can just start thinking about spraying individual plants, spraying patches, so you can reduce a lot of the pesticides applications that you have in the field. So these make more sustainable crop management system. And then you will see a lot of reduce of insecticide use. This is the last slide of my presentation. I think, I don't know if I cover all 30 minutes, I don't know. But I just want to thanks. I have been receiving support from the Louisiana Soybean Board to start thinking about how we can automate pest counting in soybeans. And I'm very open to answer any questions that you have. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Yvonne. Yeah, that's fantastic work. It's really exciting to see yeah, from a lot of us who do scouting that
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
tools to make this easier for us. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we've got yeah, about 10 minutes for questions. So feel free to unmute or type your question into the chat. And I think I did see there was one in there. So maybe just if you could give just a quick wait a minute, what is machine learning again?
Oh yeah, for sure.
From the chat
So
there. Thank
yeah, so I have a question that said, what is machine learning? So
you.
in generally, machine learning is a tool that you can use for image analysis. Not only is applied for detect objects in images, it can be used to build large language models. And when I mean requires a PhD level talent, is because you need a lot of coding courses to be able to create a machine learning model, which is not necessary to have a PhD level at this moment, but I feel that applying machine learning needs to start with the main research question that you want to ask. How I can tackle that problem and how with the data I can apply automation. That is the main thing. Yeah, can I read it, the other question that I have?
The question
It's
from
fine.
Kitty?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
So right now in the Louisiana farmers, I think that they're very enthusiastic about using precision ag here in the state. That is why they want to form this cluster hire. That is why I also receive funding for the Louisiana Soybean Board to be able to develop this technology in soybean. So they are want to automate their process, being more efficient. They, at least in here in Louisiana, weather is terrible during summer. It's very humid and hot. So they need to have tools that they can enhance their production. Yes.
Christoph.
Hi, Ivan. That was a great talk. Thank you so much. That's so impressive. For sure, for scouting, that's going to help people a lot. And I love this technology, but I'm going to ask a question about your vision of how you're going to apply that. Because if you think about remote sensing, there is tons of publication, not only in pest management, but in your plant pathology. We've got lots and lots of people creating, machine learning system, lots of small device, lots of small things. My question for you is, lots of these papers that are in the publication, very few are actually
going to
be produced.
Yeah.
So what's your plan for your lab to actually, are you going to make your own company? Are you going to try to team up with a big company to actually make stuff out there? How are you going to apply all your knowledge to something that's going to be like a commercial product?
Yeah, absolutely. Every time when I think about the problem to tackle, I start with a research question. And also I ask the same research question if I'm a farmer, right? Farmers cannot have all the technology that we can afford. So they want to have something simple. Recently, I attended a conference of artificial intelligence. They just want to use their phones. They are not interested in using drone technology. They just want to use mobile applications, for example, that they can download in their phone because they're very into cell phone devices. So how I can approach the adoption to farmers is to start simple. Create a tool that is open source accessible. It don't requires a lot of resources, and also be able to move to the next step. The next step, as I mentioned, when I was doing my PhD, was trying to get the patent of the system, which I'm working with Kansas State University to do that. And then definitely we want to do a more commercial level of the technology, definitely partnership with funding agencies or industry partners that can take the product as a basic and develop to the end user. That is the main goal. But so far, how I envision my program is to create platforms that farmers can download, have in their phone, and they can use it. That I think that is the best approach, because I cannot tell the farmer, buy the DJI Mavic 3 Pro that costs 10K. The farmer will never adopt. But if we can think about easy applications, so the farmer can just go to the Apple Store, download the app to detect, I don't know, any specific pest. And then I think that will increase the adoption.
Thank you so much. Great talk again.
Yep.
Great. And Natalia had her hand up.
Hi. Yes. Great talk, Ivan. I'm a computer scientist, so I have some questions as well. Like all the models that you have developed so far have been with high technology images, or have you done any of the models with just like fun images? What is the quality of images that you are using?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. So we start getting the information with very simple sensors, so it's more applicable. For example, all the images of the sorghum system was based on field settings. So I went there with my team and we collected a bunch of images, like 8,000 images of different sorghum aphid densities with a camera sensor that resembled to a mobile phone. one of the tricky parts about this that we find some mistakes. For example, if you upload an image that resembles to a different aphid, the model is able to detect as a specific aphid that was trained. So there is not there are some error there. Okay. So one of the things that I was thinking about how you can address those issues is trying to integrate other technologies that can enhance that detections. For example, multispectral sensors help. Again, so I'm not thinking about, or I'm thinking about using other type of sensors that can enhance those detections that be more accurate, so it can distinguish between more aphid species, for example.
Okay, and I have another question, like because the confusion matrix you are showing like the kind of like the true positives and the false positives as well, and the false negatives. Have you also detect something that actually is not part of your what you are
Oh
trying
yeah,
to
for
detect?
sure. Yeah, for
And
sure.
do you know how is the scale, like what is how much is those missed?
So yeah, so the thing is that I always think about what is the management decision, what is the applicability, right? Most of the researchers now, they want to detect everything, but it's not necessary. So for example, in sorghum aphids, if you detect 50 aphids in the image, you can make a management decision. You cannot need to detect 200 or 300 aphids. So if you are accurate detecting 50, that is awesome because the farmer will adopt that technology immediately, right? So you can have some mistakes, right? But if you have
Okay.
very good accuracy levels to tell me, in this image, you have 50 aphids and you have to make a management decision, I think that it's very useful for the farmer. It's not necessary that the farmer needs to know, hey, in this leaf, I have 1,000 aphids. No, the farmer just wants to see what is the applicability behind the technology. So that was in my mind, how I can use this technology so the farmers can make a management decision.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Great.
Yep.
And in the chat, Vipin has asked, were you able to differentiate between sorghum versus sugarcane aphids in your PhD work? And did you evaluate the robotic system
Yeah.
for economic field testing?
Yeah. So we didn't, Pipan, we didn't evaluate the field economics of the system at the moment. That is a very good question. I don't think so we did. Right now, it's just the tech behind how the model is able to detect the aphids. And we focus just in the specific insect. I don't think so. I don't think so. We train a model that can distinguish between sorghum and sorghum aphid. Was a specific training to detect the cluster of the aphids in the soybean leaf. But that would be cool to know how it can save a lot if you use the ground robotic system compared with a whole field application, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, then I had kind of a question about the nitty-gritty of collecting the data, say out in the Delta there with the canes. Would that be with a drone? And have you how you be able to get images of, say, the base of the plant when it's a dense
that's a very
population
tricky.
of the canes?
Yeah, for sure. Right now we are just doing how the researcher is doing, collect the data, collect the plants, come to the lab, gather the information, because it's so hot and humid in the river to start counting them. So all the counting is inaccurate, but it will be cool to do with drone technology. The thing is that these canes are covered by the leaf sheet, so there has to be some mechanisms that can, I don't know, can scan the plant and see how many scales they are without taking these leaves. So that is kind of tricky, but that could be a very cool thing to think about.
Okay, and then Kitty asks in the chat, do you know if there's any machine learning being applied in large urban settings, specifically with pests like rodents?
I don't think so, but there is a lot of research going on to understand to detect animal behavior, for example. There is a lot of research going to use machine learning to detect livestock, but I never think about detecting rodents. I don't hear, but I'm pretty sure that maybe there is some research going on to detect them.
Mm-hmm. Great. And maybe final question from Kyle.
Hey, Yvonne, thanks for the presentation. That was great. Just thinking about getting your tools into more of an applied, actually making something that a farmer can use. Have you thought about, or has anybody worked on like integrating these types of machine learning image detection tools with like pheromone traps? Like I'm just thinking about stink bugs and pheromone trap monitoring is something.
Yeah, for sure. There is a company that is selling a monitoring trap that is integrated with lures, and also it has a camera system built into the trap. So when it goes and attract the stink bug, I don't know, it takes an image and then it tells you the species and how many they are. So there is a company that you can buy those traps. I don't know how much they are, but I don't think so. It's pretty cheap. And that is the tricky part, right? In soybean production, you have so many acreages. So farmers will not buy cameras that cost, I don't know, each camera system can cost 200, for example. They have so many acreages of sorghum. So I don't think so is feasible, but the technology is there for sure.
Thanks.
Okay.